The white police officer who killed 27-year-old Rayshard Brooks has now been charged with murder. The death of Brooks had sparked off another massive wave of protests in the United States. The police were called when Brooks fell asleep in his car at an eatery's drive-thru in Atlanta. He later failed a sobriety test. Brooks was then shot dead when he tried to escape arrest. The officer who shot Brooks faces 11 charges including felony murder, assault with a deadly weapon and violating his oath of office.
What we discovered is during the 2 minutes and 12 seconds that Officer Rolfe actually kicked Mr. Brooks while he laid on the ground, while he was there fighting for his life. Secondly, from the videotape, we were able to see that the other officer, Officer Brosnan, actually stood on Mr. Brooks's shoulders while he was there struggling for his life.
Brooks' family welcomed these charges, with his widow commending the district attorney's office for charging these officers appropriately. Brooks' attorney, however, said that this was no reason for celebration, as the incident should have never happened in the first place. Meanwhile, a recorded message from the brother of George Floyd was played at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. Floyd's brother urged the international body to investigate police brutality and racial discrimination in the United States. The debate, convened at the request of African countries, will continue till Thursday.
You watched my brother die. That could have been me. I am my brother's keeper. You in the United Nations are your brothers and sisters keepers in America. And you have the power to help us get justice for my brother George Floyd. I am asking you to help him. I am asking you to help me. I am asking you to help us, black people in America. I hope that you would consider establishing an independent commission of inquiry to investigate police killings of black people in America and the violence used against peaceful protesters.
Jagriti Dave is joining us live from Washington, D.C. for more details on the situation in the U.S. Thanks so much for joining us, Jagriti. Now, the Atlanta police officer who shot Brooks has been charged with felony murder, and another officer faces more charges. So what has been the reaction across the country? Do people feel that some sort of justice has been delivered?
Well, many people noted that the swiftness of the charges that were brought shows that things are moving on, shows the pressure that is being put on to take action after several African Americans have died at the hands of the police. Charges were also brought against Derek Chauvin, the officer involved in the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, that really set off the waves of protests that we've seen across the country. But of course, as you heard there from George Floyd's brother, there's a call for wider changes to happen across society. So the swiftness of the charges do indicate the pressure that is being put on officials to act.
Right. Now, tell us a little bit about the situation on ground. Are the protests about these situations continuing? How are they different? And how are different authorities across states in the U.S. responding?
Yeah, so there are ongoing protests across the country. We heard when they were very public when we heard a lot of reporting when the protests, when there was violence on the streets, clashes between police and protesters. But, here in Washington, D.C., there hasn't been a curfew. There still have been sort of protests in different parts of the country. And since the charges were brought, there were protests in Atlanta that have been continuing. But really, what's the focus seems to be now on changes that need to be made, the changes that the president has talked about in his executive order, which many critics believe don't go far enough. There are reforms being put forward in terms of bills by the Democrats and reforms by the Republicans who have differing views on the extent of the need for police reform. While the Democrats are debating about banning chokeholds altogether, the Republicans are talking about limiting chokeholds and focusing on police training. But individual individual police departments, individual states, city councils, they're all talking in different ways about making reforms, however wide-sweeping or narrow they are.
My final question, how do experts and activists in the United States see the Black Lives Matter movement panning out in the future?
Well, this isn't the first time that we've had protests in the United States after the deaths of African Americans in police custody. There have been protests before, and many activists have said, well, after those protests, nothing much has changed. There is a real sense of hope that things will be different this time for a variety of reasons, possibly because of the nature of the fact that these incidents have been captured on camera phones and have gone viral, videos that have gone viral on social media, and combined with the fact that there's a pandemic and people have been sort of stuck at home and have been able to go out and protest, and so people, obviously activists, don't want to get their hopes up because things haven't changed in the past, but there is a real sense that there's a push for change, and the fact that conversations are being had, say activists, about police reform in a way that they haven't had before is leading some activists to be hopeful, but they're also concerned that measures aren't going far enough as they would like.
All right, Jagriti, thank you so much for joining us and for all your inputs on this story.